So good morning. We're going to take you from La Brasa, the Mexican restaurant here on Wrightsville Avenue in Wilmington, over to Unity of Wilmington and show you the campus. So the street address of Wilmington, Unity of Wilmington, is on Orchard Avenue, and Orchard Avenue is just past that light there, so I wanted to start a little early just to give you a chance to prepare for what Unity of Wilmington is. Wilmington is a city of about 250,000 people, including the surroundings, and Unity of Wilmington was founded in the 1970s here in this location. However, the current buildings date to a little later because the original facility was a private house which was used by the church and by the founding, now pastor, Reverend Emeritus Rene Perret, his wife Marie, and they're wonderful people, and they're still involved with Unity of Wilmington even today in their 90s. And this is a wonderful neighborhood in what's called Midtown Wilmington. Independence Drive is there. That goes up to Market Street. You can get to the interstate. There's lots of arts in Wilmington. The college here. So if we cross over here, that's the bike path, and that goes to Empey Park, which has a lot of tennis courts and a little bit of woods without trails, but I actually kind of bushwhacked a little, and there's someone put a chair in there you can sit on. Anyway, so this is Wilshire and Rosemont, and if you go up Rosemont all the way to the end, about 4 blocks, you get to it's the bike path. The bike path continues over a wooden bridge which spans the spillway of a small dam which goes into the Burnt Mill Creek. There's a reservoir up there. So this is the back parking lot for Unity of Wilmington. But I'm going to go around the block and show you nice people on YouTube here what it's like to come around the other way. But if you keep going up this bike trail, half a mile you'll be at a wonderful little brewery, big one, called the Flying Machine. And the beer that they make there, they produce it on site, is sold all over Wilmington on tap and in cans, and also at their other location, a newer location on Wrightsville Beach. Well, not on Wrightsville Beach, but in Wrightsville Beach. And I haven't been there, but it looks to be very, very nice. So it's the end of July here in Wilmington, and it's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Pretty high humidity, but it's been worse. So if any of you nice people have questions about Unity of Wilmington, our website is UnityWil.org, I think. I don't think it's .com. Could be. UnityWil.com. And we're also on Facebook, live streaming the Sunday services with lessons from currently guest and visiting speakers, because we're in transition from our former ministers since last March, since this past March, which is a very exciting opportunity for Unity of Wilmington and for all of the people who both can hear and give teaching and lessons at Unity of Wilmington in the meantime, while we search for new leadership. So this is called Farmers Street, and this is there's a playground at the end of this. But so Unity, if you don't know what Unity is, it's a Christian denomination, or it's a movement and denomination, a worldwide spiritual movement begun in Missouri in the 1880s, which was founded on the principles of the Bible as its textbook, and of Jesus as the way shower and teacher of how to apply principles of practical Christianity to your own life and to the benefit of the world. And Unity is known for a couple of things. First of all, it's the church that Lucy of I Love Lucy was a member of, and it's also the church that Maya Angelou, the late Maya Angelou, was part of, and who actually she spoke about her involvement and love of Unity several times in interviews. Unity is also known for silent unity, which you can call at 1-800-NOW-PRAY, NOWPRAY. And it's also known for the prayer for protection, which Buzz Aldrin actually took to the moon. And the prayer for protection by Janet Dillard Freeman was written in the 30s, or was taken on the front in World War II to help comfort people. It's the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. So that's the prayer for protection, and that's pretty much Unity. So anyway, so yeah, down to brass tacks. This is a public playground, and around the corner here is Orchard Avenue, and Unity of Wilmington is on the left, just past the intersection with another short street. So I very much like this neighborhood. I find it nice and peaceful. Starting to get lighter, huh? Welcome to Unity of Wilmington. Here is our gazebo. may peace prevail on earth. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. A peace that was meant to be, with God as creator, united all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every breath I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin at unity. I wish I could find a place to stay. I just need a safe place to sleep. Armand and Angelina, Della Volpe, are so grateful for Unity. They've come and visited. So this is a little box where you can share your feelings. And it's owls. Then on the other side of the flag it's love. So it's a lovely breeze here. So as to the building, there's offices there which are now rented out. We used to use those offices for our own administration. And then over on the other side is the sanctuary, where we have services and do events, and it's rented out for concerts as well. And there's a fellowship hall, a meeting hall on the other side of these offices in this wing. And then to the left behind is an annex which has 3 or 4 classrooms and office, which we used to rent out to Peace Rose Montessori School. And there's a nice playground on the other side and a storage shed. And then on the other side there's a little garden you can walk through, and we're currently working to renovate the grounds and clean it up. There's not much renovation to be done, but if anybody's interested in volunteering, we're always happy. So, Sunday at 11, and it's about 45 minutes or an hour, and I love to go to the taco place afterwards. They do have a couple of little vegetarian options. They're very good, and they have burritos and everything, and they cocktails, and they'll take beer and put tomato juice in it or something, I don't know. And there's the brewery up by the reservoir. And if you walk through Empey Park, which has the tennis courts, you'll get to the Harris Teeter, which is a large, nice supermarket in a series of shops, which is called Hanover Center, which is a strip mall type place. Very old, has a beautiful arcade, a covered sidewalk. And then there's also a Hardee's over there, and a Books A Million where you can sit and have a coffee and buy a book. Across from Books A Million on Floral Parkway, which is if you went down Wrightsville Avenue there, the next light would be Floral, is King Off's Jewelers on the left, right before Peachtree, and a tobacco store, and there's a Whole Foods on the other side of Oleander, which is this four-lane highway, not highway, but four-lane road, which separates Hanover Center from the Independence Mall, which has shops lining Oleander, a Starbucks, a Panera, a little strip mall with a wonderful barber, and there's going to be an Indochine. It's a Thai restaurant. They're having a kitchen there, Indochine Express. It's very, very well thought of, Indochine. It's on Market Street. Firehouse Subs. There's a couple of sports bars, and then a bank. And on the other side of Floral, there's the Whole Foods. But the parking lot for the mall is huge, and the mall is very nice. There's a Belk's and a Dillard's. So yeah, there's a lot around here, and there's restaurants. There's a food court in the mall. Nikki's Sushi is very good there, and yeah, just really a very nice neighborhood. I live just over if you go down, when I go home, I'll go down that little street and then cross Independence, which is a four-lane highway, a separated four-lane road, and then this continues on the other side of that for a block, and then make a left, and then that is the continuation of my street, which crosses over Wrightsville, which is a four-lane undivided road over between Country Club and Independence. And if you go down Wrightsville that way, or down Oleander that way, in about 2 miles you'll get to the downtown Wilmington and the river. So I'll take a moment here around the grounds here and then walk home and take you halfway. So yeah, the sun's coming up. Well, I sure am glad to have you with me, and this is my first time actually making a vlog for my new project channel called Protohumanism. And I was just thinking, protohumanism, what is protohumanism? Protohumanism is a celebration, and it's a celebration together. So when people celebrate together and they share things that they enjoy, whether it's music, opinions, being happy or sad, talking about showing or talking about how they enjoy or appreciate the world. It's neither religious or non-religious. It's neither spiritual or material. It's whatever. It's pretty much just an excuse for me to be interested in sharing stuff, because I find it easier to concentrate on things when I am sharing them with other people, because it's kind of like I have an audience, and it's not that I want to impress so much. I mean, of course I want to impress, who doesn't, but I enjoy edifying and hearing things that I don't know. I made a mistake. I was talking last night in a Twitch chat with on a gentleman's stream. There was maybe 15, 20 people in the chat, 5 or 6 were active, and a guy named Socrates, 737 or something, Socrates, guy, he lives in England. I made a joke. I said, oh yes, Plato, it was in context, amazing. I said, Plato, yes, that means he had a broad nose because he got it punched in when he was a boxer. I said, Plato went hard. He went beast mode on people. And Socrates, the other person in the chat, he said to me, no, Plato means broad-shouldered. That's what he was a wrestler, and that Plato was his nickname. It's like some people are the Hulk. Plato is Plato. So I was like, oh wow, that's cool. I mean, I enjoy being corrected because it means that I know something better than I did. I don't like looking foolish, but if you are being corrected with something, you do well to be gracious about it, because there's nothing, you make yourself look foolish twice when you aren't gracious about, or make a big deal out of, oh, you corrected me. But, no, protohumanism, just a thing about that, my friend Gerhard Pryor, professor, was born in 1944, at the University of Frankfurt in Germany. He has a journal for 35 years called Proto-Sociology. He's a sociology professor who also does philosophy of the mind, which he calls philosophy of mental, because he doesn't want to box us into the concept of mind. He's interested in pre-reflective consciousness, along with Manfred Frank, who does that, Dieter Henrich, Fichte's original insight, das Ich setzt ich als mich setzende. The I posits the I as self-positing. There's actually a YouTube video, a very funny one, by a guy named Cantbot2000 on Twitter, who he went into this is about Fichte. Do you know about Fichte? He was at a demonstration, a protest in Times Square in the lead up to, or just after the 2016 election, and everybody there was mostly showing their support for the Democratic candidate who lost. And there was an interviewer who was looking for somebody to not represent, but somebody who was an example of a Trump supporter. And the interviewer said, "Oh, I'm so glad I found you. I've been looking all over. Everyone here is for Hillary." And she said, "Who did you vote for?" And the gentleman said, "I didn't vote for anybody. I don't believe in voting. I don't believe in democracy. I believe in global cooling. The world is cooling down, sea levels lowering. I believe in land coming up from the ocean with ancient ruins on it, like the ruins of Thule. And I think that Trump is going to tell us about the aliens. The government's known about this for a long time. There are aliens, and they have secrets to the origins of human consciousness. And we're going to learn about them." And he went on to talk about German idealism, which was a philosophical movement or project in the early 19th century, inaugurated, one might say, by Hegel and some of his friends. And Cantbot threw out there the name of Schelling. He says, do you know about Schelling? Have you read the historical critical introduction to the philosophy of mythology? And the woman says, "Oh, I don't know about that." He says, this is German idealism. Trump is going to complete the system of German idealism. Kant couldn't do it. Hegel couldn't do it. Fichte couldn't do it. But Trump's going to complete the system. Is that a good thing? He says, "It terrifies me." Because what happens if Trump completes the system of German idealism? The idea of German idealism was that if you understand, I'm a layman in this, but if you could correctly understand aesthetics and the progress of history, you could, in a holistic way, grasp a full understanding of consciousness, history, the human condition, things like that. And there was a bunch of friends And Kant explains, he says, Schelling, he was roommates with Hölderlin and Hegel. It's funny he says Hegel rather than Hegel. And Hölderlin was an artist who did like pictures of like gnomes and stuff. And I've seen his stuff. It's pretty cool. And it was German, and it was more culturally nationalistic than politically nationalistic. But Fichte was an anti-Semite, philosophically speaking, and did not count the Jews among the German cultural community. However, there were Jews who were involved with these philosophers. The philosopher Immanuel Kant in Königsberg, which is now Kaliningrad, in that little bit of Russia which is on the other side of Latvia and Lithuania. It's on the ocean. It's become important recently with the recent mess in Ukraine. And Kant, whose big thing was the golden rule, the categorical imperative. I don't do anything that I wouldn't want the other person to do to me or had to have done to me. He wrote something called A Critique of Pure Reason, and he wrote some other stuff too. But he was friends, and he was unmarried, and he was this kind of frail little guy, and he'd go for a walk every day for an hour, the same circuit, and he would always stop at the same bush and hang out there for a minute and then come home. And I don't know if he smoked a pipe, I don't think so, but he had a pocket watch. Anyway, he would have friends over, and he'd have dinner parties, and he'd have, not strict rules, but he'd be like, okay, first you tell a story, then you go around and tell jokes, and then, so anyway, he was very, as they say, gezellig, he was very companionable or very friendly, or whatever, and he had a friend who was Jewish, and I'm pretty sure Solomon Maimon was Jewish, and this was a little earlier, in the late 1700s, and you have to check me on all this, because I did not study this in college. I have a German minor, but I didn't specialize, and I didn't read any of this stuff. Except for Goethe, and Goethe wasn't a German idealist, but he was around the same time. He wrote his famous novel is an epistolary novel made up of letters, fictional letters, called The Sorrows of Young Werther. And at the end of it, Werther, the protagonist, shoots himself in the head. And this caused a scandal because people said, oh no, there's going to be copycat suicides. Everybody looks at Werther and how he had a crush on his friend's wife, this woman who had to marry his friend, who was a nice dude but boring, and he was friends with them. And this is actually similar to what happened to Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard actually, he could have married Regina, but he said, marry or not married, you'll regret it either way. And he said, I can't make you suffer through being my wife. I don't feel personally prepared or able to be your husband. And she married this boring guy, and he became a official in the Danish West Indies, which is now the U.S. Virgin Islands. And Regina, after Kierkegaard's death at a young age, relatively young age, she edited his papers, I believe. And it's a very beautiful example of love which occurs between a woman who's married and a man who is unmarried. And that's what happens in Werther. Die Leiden des jungen Werthers is in German. It's I haven't read it in the German very much, but there's good English translations. My favorite novel is one he wrote when he was older, in the 1820s or something. It's called Die Wahlverwandtschaften, the elective affinities. Wahl meaning choice, Verwandtschaft is a relation. So it refers to an idea in chemistry where if you have electronegativity, if you have a compound if you have elements A and B, and A is, let's say, negative 2.0, and B is positive 1.5, they'll bond ionically. But then if element C comes in and its electronegativity is negative 3 or something, the negative 1.5 will go over to the more electronegative element. And if number D is plus 2.5, or something, it'll go. And the idea is that there was a married couple, and everybody's named Otto in this, except for Charlotte. There's always a Charlotte in Goethe. And Otto is married to Charlotte, and he's got like a chateau, a castle in this nice German town. He's like the noble of the town, and he served in the engineers of the local kingdom with his friend, the captain. Well, I think he's named Otto, but he just called him the captain. So the captain comes and visits because he's kind of depressed, and Otto says, well, come on, Charlotte, we're in love, and you're a widow, and you have a stepdaughter named Ottilie, who's going to come stay with us, who's unhappy at her boarding school, and she's like a teenager. And the captain will come and keep you company, and me company too, because he needs something to distract him, and we need to renovate the gardens and renovate the landscape. So the captain comes and really gets to be friendly with Charlotte, and pretty sure her name is Charlotte, the wife, and he gives her a peck on the cheek at one point, and she's like, yeah, this can't happen. And he's like, yeah, I really like you, but come on. And in the meantime, Ottilie, as relating to Otto, she's the love of his life. So he falls madly in love with her, and I don't think they get up to anything. But when he and his wife have relations, he's thinking of Ottilie, and she's thinking of the captain. So when they have a baby, which binds them together, which means they can't divorce, because they're Lutherans, so they can divorce, but it's kind of and then there's this guy who comes visits, and he's the mean guy who keeps couples together. So they have to stay married because of this baby, and the baby has Ottilie's eyes and looks like the captain. And this goes to the idea of impressions, that if a mother sees an elephant when she's pregnant, the kid will have a nose like an elephant or something. And Goethe, I don't think he believed in this, but he was interested in these kinds of things. He conceived of colors as feelings rather than as light on a spectrum. And the Waldorf schools, with Steiner and anthroposophy, electric magnetics, David Liebehart science. I'm a scientist. He's a Christian Science member. Who says Salome? But thank you so much for listening to this. Otto, Ottilie, Goethe, the elective affinities, the captain, Ottilie, the baby. So if a pregnant woman sees an elephant, maybe the baby will have an elephant's nose, for example. And this is common in a lot of pregnancy taboos and things like that. And it goes, it's common among cultures. But in this 18th century context, there was a focus or an idea that if the parent was thinking of something at the moment of conception, that would have a significant influence on the baby. And the famous example of this, which I heard about through a book called Freedom and Time by Jed Rubenfeld, professor at the Yale Law School. I wrote about it for my freshman writing seminar he's now president of Princeton, His name will come to me. Very, very nice guy. Freedom and Time. Tristram Shandy is a novel where the protagonist, Tristram Shandy, is kind of doomed to like pop in and out of different time periods and stuff. And why? Because when his father was conceiving him, at the moment of conception, he looked up at a clock and thought, oh, what time is it? So because he wasn't concentrating on that moment, Tristram Shandy became not a man out of time in the Paul sense of, somebody who's who came late in the wrong era for, to get on the ground floor, but somebody who's unmoored in time, like Doctor Who. Anyway, I haven't read Tristram Shandy, but that gets back to the elective affinities, where when the captain and his wife have their daughter, at the time, legs falling asleep, she is thinking of the captain, and he is thinking of, now my other leg can fall asleep, and he is thinking of Ottilie. So the baby looks like Ottilie with her eyes, and then looks like the captain in her face. And the idea of that is that the baby in its looks is a physical reminder of their, emotional affair. So in any case, they don't get divorced. Ottilie exiles herself, and Otto says, as long as she never comes to this chateau, I won't look for her. But he ends up stalking her. So he finds her, because she promises to never say another word. So she hangs out silently. Oh, no, she leaves. And he follows her to an inn and stalks her. And she says, I'm not going to say a word to you because, I can't. She drowns the baby by accident. Okay? Which is, real sad. It's kind of one of the main plot points. Oh, my leg really is asleep. This hasn't happened for a while. Oh, God. Okay, let me finish this story. So Ottilie she drowned the baby, and as a penance, she says, I'm not going to say a word. And she just, she doesn't eat very much, and she ends up dying of starvation. But before that, she says, I'm going to go not be here anymore because this is awkward. And he says, I promise not to stalk you as long as you don't come here, or something like that. No, I won't bother you as long as you stay here, but if you leave, you're fair game, or something like that. And he stalks her and comes to the inn, comes to the hotel where she's staying, and she gives him a letter, I think, which says, I can't talk to you anymore, or something like that. Anyway, so she dies at the end, which is very sad, and she's buried along with the baby in this little chapel, which existed before the chateau was built, the Schloss was built. And I've only ever read this in English. The first chapter is really good, then it starts to drag a bit with the exposition. But it is a more modern novel than a lot of these late 18th century novels. Goethe was an early example of a movement called Storm and Stress, Sturm und Drang. But, okay, I'm going to finish the elective affinities. It's a great story. It's my favorite. My favorite German thing. German idealism is a little... Also, it gets into Proto-German nationalism. Fichte was, I think, politically a bit of a German nationalist, which in the pre-1848 times was in opposition to the consolidation of French power in the lead-up to the monarchy stuff in 1830s and stuff, before the Republic, and then Napoleon III got elected and became Emperor Napoleon and had a Franco-Prussian war and got his butt kicked at Sedan just after the Prussians beat the Austrians in 64. Goethe is the bomb. And he always said, listen, learn to be an accountant or something and be an official for a local king or whatever. And I think he was married. I don't know if he had kids. His descendants, none of them are known. It's not like Bach, where he had like 8 kids and they all were, pretty badass, especially C.P. Bach, who wrote Easter Passions, and he's known for his oratorios, his organ music, and other stuff which was post-Bach, going into the 18th century and the Galant. And I enjoy Baroque music better than C.P. Bach and other stuff of that era, but EWV 156, the overture, the Sinfonia. Is very well known. Less well known is the rest of the cantata, which is nice and short. A lot of it's for bass, solo bass, which makes it easy to sing and easy to get personnel for, as long as you have a bass. And it's called I Stand with One Foot in the Grave. Ich stehe mit einem Fuß im Grabe. Ich stehe mit einem Fuß im Grabe. I stand with one foot in the grave. That's the first movement, and then there's 2 recitatives, which I really like. One of them is Und willst du, dass ich nicht soll kranken, so werde ich dir von Herzen danken. And if it's your will that I not get sick, I'll thank you from my heart. And then it's a nice little cantata, and it's any cantata. It's all done. Harnoncourt does it. The director, and Sean Elliott Gardner does it, and J.E.G. I saw him in the Concertgebouw in Amsterdam in 2007 for a Christmas concert, and there was Dutch hymns, which I thought was fun. I always like Dutch because it's goed en goed te geven. The song Nimmerkita Pa by Jacques Brel, he did a really cool Dutch version, and it's very famous. It's in English. If you go away on this summer's day, da 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 da. And it's Ne me quitte pas, tout peut s'oublier, da 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 da. Qui s'enfuit déjà, oublier le temps de malentendu et le temps perdu, à savoir comment oublier ces heures qui tuaient parfois courtes. Pourquoi le jour, da da da. Ne me quitte pas, ne me quitte pas, ne me quitte pas, ne me quitte pas. Moi, je t'offrirai des perles de pluie venues d'un pays où il ne pleut pas. Je creuserai la terre jusqu'à prouver ma mort pour couvrir ton corps d'or. Et de lumière je ferai un domaine où l'amour sera loi, où l'amour sera roi, et tout sera reine. Ne me quitte pas, ne me quitte pas, ne me quitte pas, ne me quitte pas. En in Dutch, laat me niet alleen, toe vergeet de strijd, toe vergeet de nijd, laat me niet alleen. In die domme tijd vol van misverstand, ach, duld van tras, verspilde tijd, hoe vaak hebben wij met een snijden woord ons geluk vermoord. Kom, dat is voorbij, Laat me niet alleen, laat me niet alleen, laat me niet alleen, laat me niet alleen. Let me not alone, don't, if you leave me here. Let me not alone. Do forget the strife. Do forget the envy. Don't leave me. In this foolish time, full of misunderstanding, it's time that's been spilled out. And we murdered our happiness with a cutting word. Don't leave me. Want heut ein Vulkan, die wat heut geblüßt, beregt sich nach Vertröst, hab ich der Wahn. Ja, da, 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 ja, da, 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 ja, da, 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 ja, da, da, da. Ja, da, 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 ja, da, 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 le rouge et le noir ne se peut-il pas? Laat me niet alleen, laat me niet alleen, laat me niet alleen, laat me niet alleen. It's very nice, and in the Dutch, this is the last one is Laat me niet alleen, kom ik vraag niet meer, kom ik spreek niet meer, want ik wil alleen. Ja da 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 da. Ik wil den schaduw zijn, ik wil den voetstap zijn, ik wil den adem zijn, laat me niet alleen. I won't talk anymore, I won't ask anymore, because I want to be alone. Let me be your shadow, let me be your footstool, let me be your breath, don't leave me. And in French, that little last bit is, let me be your shadow, let me be the shadow of your hand, let me be the shadow of your dog, don't leave me. And it's pathetic in the truest sense of the word. So, to come back to German idealism, and pathetic in the Aristotelian sense of, dramatically pathetic, when you have a drama like the total drama mama llamas of the fiction of Goethe, as I was talking about before, it comes into questions of consciousness and love, and a lot of these people were either theologians themselves or the children of Protestant ministers, of Lutheran ministers. Schelling was more philosophically, more literarily oriented. I'm not so familiar with him. And Schlegel was himself a theologian. And all of these people were kind of friends, and they had something they called sim philosophy. They'd have what's called a Stammbuch. They'd have like a notebook like that, like over in the gazebo, where you could write what you wanted in it, and it was, I guess you'd call it in English, a commonplace book. And if you collected all of that stuff, it would be which is a flower garden of stuff, of writings. And if you turned that into an anthology of your language, learning a language, or whatever, that's called a chrestomathy. Chrestos meaning useful, and mathy meaning for learning. So this sim philosophy is pretty groovy, and there's descriptions of this in Gerhard Pryor, who's a personal friend of mine. He's become a personal friend of mine in the last 10 years. I'm his assistant in preparing, when he prepares English manuscripts. I've been thanked in a few footnotes, which is a better payment than $1,000, which I don't get, or if I did, I would donate it back to the project. Get a cup of coffee. He visited in New York and he bought me dim sim. This is pretty cool. I think this is a pretty good first. This is a podcast of mine, actually, I guess. So getting back to Kantbot. This was a very well-known video on YouTube because it was a fresh perspective, inland seafood. Being on the coast here, we get good shrimp and stuff. Ooh, my leg is a lot better now. Kantbot. There's an article written about him, about how he's kind of a troll, but people don't realize he's actually more educated and kind of an evangelist for getting people interested in this stuff. But he's kind of in it for the lulls, for amusement's sake. And he's joyful. And he's fat and enjoys food and whatever. Anyway, enough about Kantbot. He's kind of a short white guy with curly hair. And at the end of the interviewer said, how old are you? And she said, are you in college? He says, no, I'm not in college. Where are you? Are you from New York? He says, I don't want to answer that. And he says, how old are you? And his buddy who's behind him says, he's eternal. So anyway, so Kantbot is talking about, he uses Trump and the march of history through Trump being a kind of a Napoleon figure in terms of being, great man theory, having an ambitious man who has an effect on history, just as Napoleon, mutatis mutandis, with, in its own context. When Napoleon was marching across Eastern Germany, or into Western Germany, Hegel ran out and was like, oh, I want to see the world spirit, the Weltgeist, coming by on a white horse. And people make fun of him for that. But, at my graduation in 2006, I saw Senator Bill Frist. I knew his son vaguely from Harrison Frist, from classes I took with him. Anyway, so I saw Senator Frist, and he was about to run for president, and he probably wasn't going to win. But I said, excuse me, Senator. And he says, yes? I say, I usually don't go up to and introduce myself to public figures, but I know your son Harrison vaguely, and I just wanted to say hello and shake your hand in case anything good happens to you. And he was someone I would very much not want to be president for a variety of reasons, but that's no reason not to be friendly or polite and to have contact with a historical figure, regardless of whether one agrees with him or enjoys him or her, is an interesting thing. So Kantbot was making the point about Trump being disruptive and Trump being important to history and Trump bringing history, and he said Trump is a Kantian, which is a ridiculous statement, because he's kind of anti-Kantian in terms of, I don't know, Kant, he says, treat other people the way you'd want to be treated by them, and if Trump has a worldview where people treat people the way that he treats people, maybe he complies with the categorical imperative, who knows. But it's hilarious. So the original interview is up, and then there's also an edit of it where it's lightly edited, and please note, this is in a crowd in Times Square at night. I think maybe the night of the election or just afterwards, and the edited version has cuts to pictures, like when he mentions the historical critical introduction to the philosophy of mythology by Schelling, they show a picture of the title page of that volume from Schellingiana, the collected works of Schelling, of the philosophy of mythology in German, because the title looks cool and it's understandable. Anyway, he says Trump is a Kantian, and he's going to complete the system of German idealism. And this guy says, oh, is that a good thing? He says, it terrifies me. He says, oh yeah, because they were going to do that in 1933 to 1945. Yeah, wasn't the... And he doesn't... Kantbot corrects him without correcting him by jumping into the context of 19th century German philosophy, because the Nazi time really is a different question. German nationalism in the 20th century is not categorically different, but you can't compare Die Wacht am Rhein and 19th century German nationalism and Deutschland über alles, meaning Germany being more important than being from the Archbishopric of Paderborn or Munich, Kingdom of Munich, of Bavaria or something. Deutschland, Deutschland über alles. So that's how he launches into 2 minutes on these philosophers. And he lists among these philosophers Fichte. And he mentions Fichte's original insight. And he just kind of throws it out there. He says, The eye posits the eye, because this guy jumps in, this older guy, and he says, stop talking about your philosophy, because he's talking, and Nazis come up, and he doesn't, he's rambling about German philosophy, and this other guy, it's the Hardee's truck. You can go to Hardee's and get breakfast if you had money. I don't have pockets, so I don't have money. Go home and eat some breakfast. It's like 7 a.m. earlier. This guy says, we don't need your book learning. We don't need your philosophy. And the guy's hype man says, burn the books, burn the books. It's kind of trolling him. And Kantbot, I guess quite sincerely, trying to engage the gentleman in conversation and keeping up his bit, says, do you know about Fichte? Do you know about Fichte? The eye posits the eye. So he quotes this very obscure, or at least inscrutable, line, which Gerhard Pryor treats, and Dieter Henrich treats in relation to Fichte's original insight, which is something like that. I don't remember. It gives me a headache. But the circle and regress comes in, which is a question of self-reference. It's a question. It's a problem in the question of self-consciousness. And remember, Kantbot said, the aliens are going to come. They have secrets about the origin of human consciousness. And he goes into German idealism. And that's really the goal of German idealism, is to understand human consciousness and the Fortschritt, the progression of human culture. So yeah, this is all pretty cool. So this comes out of the 4chan Pepe context, although Kantbot himself, I'm not familiar with his involvement with any of this, but there was a tendency among the normie media, see Nagel's book, Kill All Normies, and also Capitalist Realism, may the author rest in peace. Zero books. Douglas Lane used to, until recently, was the editor there, and it's an imprint of a larger house. Anyway, what was I saying? Kill All Normies. Yeah, Pepe. Pepe was kind of not co-opted, but in the mainstream of the alt-right type thing was considered a hate symbol, and to some extent it could be, but it's kind of it originally came from a comic where similar to Big Chungus, which is a meme which uses a still from a Bugs Bunny cartoon where he looks like this kind of chubby, and it's selected, and you can look it up and know your meme. I'll spare you that backstory, but Big Chungus comparing to Pepe, there was an illustration of Pepe, who's this anthropomorphic frog, at a urinal, and he has his pants, he's dropped his trousers rather than using the fly, and he's urinating, and somebody asks him, why do you do that? And Pepe says, feels good, man. So the picture of his face going like, was taken to be, in the counterculture, a way of kind of making a smirking joke at the world or something, and it was used by people in shitposting forums on things like 4chan and stuff like that. I'm really not familiar with this. I've never been on 4chan. I seriously haven't. I used to read Something Awful, but I never really looked at their forums too much. I was on news groups in the 90s. alt.fan.Douglas Adams. I was Veet Vujagig. Veet Vujagig was a very promising student at the University of Maximegallon until he spent a weekend drinking Pangalactic Gargle Blasters with Zaphod Beeblebrox, and he disappeared for 6 months. When he came back, he said that he had been on a planet which had an entirely biroid, Bic pens, form of life, and that he had driven as a cab driver or a chauffeur for a family of cheap blue retractable pens for a while. Anyway, so I chose that. It was a footnote in about 100 pages into the first volume of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. Anyway, I like Douglas Adams. My mom introduced me to him when I was like 10 or 11. I liked it. 7th grade. So Cantbot and Peppy. I don't know if he personally identifies with Peppy, but in the video, the hype man, his buddy, goes like this. And there's a Pepe meme where the image of Pepe, which they've made him into a character kind of, and he was a character in the original comic, but his use in these political type contexts or cultural type contexts has been disavowed by the creator of the original comic. But I guess it's parody, so it's fair use. There's a picture of Pepe as a meme where he's going like this, almost like the fedora man, milady, who's going like this, and he has a hat, fedora. But in any case, yeah. So the joke being that the alt-right, the hate group, got Trump elected, which I mean is a hot take, and it's valid as far as that goes. But Cantbot, it ends with him having this interaction with the gentleman who starts heckling him, and burn the books. His hype is burn the books, and the guy's like, forget about you. He says, do you know about Fichte? Holderlin. He was roommates with a Holderlin and Hegel, I think Schelling was. And I'm actually administrator of a group on Facebook called The Phenomenology of Spiritual Memes, which is a play on the title of Hegel's main work, The Phenomenology of Spirit, which is, Gerhardt calls it a catastrophe of organization. It was inspired by his lecture notes at the University of Berlin. Oh, he died of a pandemic. They were quarantining in the suburbs, the countryside, because there was cholera in the city, and he came back too early and he got cholera and he shit himself to death. It sucks. I'm glad I live in the 21st century where we have vaccines and antibiotics and stuff. And we don't die of communicable diseases except for COVID before we had vaccines with the Delta variant and stuff like that. Ooh. The eye posits the eye. Oh my. I used to have braces. Anyway, I had a tooth removed, so I threw you down there. Anyway, that's gross. I'm sorry. This is the Flemish version of Le Plat Pays, the flat land, which I think sounds better in Flemish. When the north wind blows and breaks on the dunes, and with a Flemish something, wanneer de noordenwind kop ik brechten horden, und met Vlaams gemoten slaap op de kruin. Wanneer de Noordsvloed bucht, net zwart bazaat, over het hijven doen, de grijze neil wacht, wanneer bij op het strand. Wanneer de zuidenwind de reren van de neer, dan kracht mijn land, mijn vlakke land. Wanneer de eerste spin zijn lentewebben weeft, dondert het geld in jullie zonlicht heeft. Wanneer de noordenwind slaapt het torenkraan, wanneer de zuidenwind jubelt langes baan, dan jecht mijn land, mijn vlakke land. Wanneer onder de wolken mensen zwergen zijn, wanneer de zonne licht op straten, kleinen bergen en het kirchen en torenspits, die hemelhoge kerken, die in het vlakke land de enige bergen zijn, wanneer onder de wolken mensen zwergen zijn. But the French is Le plat pays qui est le mien. I don't even know the French so well, but it's Jacques Brel. My mother really loves Jacques Brel. She's 78, and she was introduced to him in the 60s when she lived in New York. So, anyway, yeah. So, German idealism with phenomenology of spiritual memes. If you type in fb.com/Geist memes, it comes up. And Lao Tong, Lambda Alpha O with underscores on Twitch. He did a speed run of the phenomenology. Absolute mad lad. And he got about 7 hours in before his voice gave out. He did a marathon reading aloud of the phenomenology, which is a ridiculous thing. To cover the phenomenology, the entire phenomenology would be not just one college course, but 3 or 4 college courses. And there's a professor named Sadler who is this locked? No, it isn't. Is it? Yeah, is it locked? No, it's not locked. I'm a member here, so if cops come, I'll say, "Oh, talk to the board of directors." So, anyway, the phenomenology of spiritual memes is a Facebook group which started as an orb posting group in semi-ironic, so ironic it's not ironic, support of the Democratic primary challenger, Marianne Williamson, who actually was a minister at a Unity Church in California, and she has written a book called A Return to Love, which is a commentary on the channeled text called A Course in Miracles, which is not itself a Unity text, but is well loved in many Unity churches and by many people who identify as Unity and are in sympathy with the whole spiritual vibe. Anyway, so Marianne Williamson wanted Department of Peace and to bring love, and they made fun because she said, imagine orbs of light, and when you have evil, imagine it being cocooned in an egg of light. And that kind of gets to Sailor Moon, where something that was evil was not destroyed, but it was banished to the Negaverse, where it wasn't going to be destroyed, but it was going to kind of live there until it realized that, hey, trying to capture and drain the crystals is kind of, it's not just cringe, it's like, it's evil because it's draining. Anyway, so I've kind of brought a little Sailor Moon into it, and Lau actually has made a series of memes a few years ago where he took portraits of Hegel and photoshopped them to look kind of like Sailor Moony. And there's a gentleman on Facebook who has an Instagram account called Edgy Hegel, Hegel, Edgy Hegel, which has memes which relate to philosophy, German idealism, and Hegel, and Zizek, and so on and so on. Zizek is a Slovenian trash panda, trash raccoon, who debated Jordan Peterson. He was very gracious. He is a Lacanian psychology scholar and a philosophical communist. In any case, his nightmare is to live in a apartment building where everybody has to sit around and debate and decide how to educate the children and take out the trash. He doesn't want to know his neighbors. Anyway, he's not an anarcho. Well, I don't know if he's whatever. Forget about Zizek. The phenomenology of spiritual memes. We're getting it more involved, and Lau is he's a mystic and a very kind young man, Gen Z. I'm a millennial. I'm 38, and Lau has done readings with explanations of Kierkegaard, and he's actually combined it with playing Dead Souls, which is a first-person adventure game with combat. And in Dead Souls, it's very common that you die a lot. Your character dies in combat a lot, and it respawns, and he had a gimmick where he said, every time I die, I have to read a paragraph of the phenomenology of spirit or something. Anyway, it was very interesting. I was in chat, and people were talking about the original text, because you get people who watch for Elder Scrolls, people who are kind of casually interested in the philosophy and also find it kind of funny, and people who have either a professional or an academic or just a casual or amateur interest in topics directly or tangentially related to the text being read. And this is proto-humanistic, and I call it sim-philology. When philology is when you like to enjoy words, like the guy Dico Maniac, who's a chess streamer. He's a French guy. He won the French grammar competition. He's about my age, a little older. He streams chess, and he likes to talk about words and stuff. But when chat is talking about words and translating things and having fun, that's called sim-philology. And I enjoy looking at the phenomenons of this kind of experience. And I'm not a phenomenologist, that is, somebody who, in a philosophical sense, describes lived experience, such as the philosopher Edmund Husserl, whose works are incredibly difficult to read because he was a mathematician. Gerhard Pryor says, oh yes, when I have a student and they've been naughty, I assign them to read Husserl as a punishment detail, a Strafarbeit, the punishment assignment. I like to consider myself, and anybody who just does this casually, and even whether they know it or not, is a phenomenologist, which is funny. It sounds like you're mispronouncing phenomenologist. So, yeah. I think the word sim-philology was used by Konstanze Gutenka at Princeton. She's now in Europe. I knew her at Hellenic Studies at Princeton. They're really nice people, Dmitry Gondakas. I could have been a grad student, if I had gotten accepted, of Peter Brown, who's famous for his Augustine. I took a seminar with him. It was my proudest moment at Princeton, one of my most memorable experiences. I made a joke. I spoke twice, once a semi-serious question, and then the other, we were talking about how saints' relics were often reflective of the landscape out of which they came, in the context of piggies with, I don't know if it's Paul or Paulinus of Nola in the Apennines in Italy, and I made a joke. I said, what's next? The penguin pelt of the Saint so-and-so of Tierra del Fuego? And Peter Brown, he started laughing, and he was like, oh man, he's great. What a guy, really good guy. I took Syriac with him. He would come in and read Syriac, which is Aramaic, Christian Aramaic, which was being taught by Manolis Papoutsakis, Emmanuel Papoutsakis, who's now in Athens, and he taught Georgian, Armenian, and Syriac at Princeton. And he was there for about 8 years, between 2004 and 2012 or so, 2014, and there was a student who was in the Armenian class, which I didn't take. I took Syriac, and the textbook was awful. It was very difficult and awkward to use, and I ran into this grad student in the Frist Student Center, and I asked him, how is Armenian going? I know that Manolis is a real philologist and grammatician, and I've heard he's a very good Armenologist, a good scholar of Armenian. And my friend said, yes, the textbook is awful, but Manolis, you know his attitude. He's a pangloss. He sees everything is the best. And he quoted Pangloss was famous. He says, "This is the best of all possible worlds." All of these awful things happen in this book by Voltaire called Candide, and Pangloss. He said, "Oh, this is the best of all possible worlds." And he said, "Oh, you know Manolis. He's a real Pangloss. He believes that we're using the best of all possible Armenian textbooks." That was hilarious. Manolis said to him, he says, "Henrik, don't go to law school. Stick with Syriac and do something important with your life." And I don't have the discipline to do what he does. He actually published a book finally on the concept of kingship in Syriac sources between like 300 and 900, I think. I don't know. I haven't read it. That was published just a few years ago in Athens. But he was helpful. In my junior paper, I did a translation of a fragment of a Syriac version of Philoponus, who was a Neoplatonic philosopher, with my thesis advisor, Christian Wiltberg. The description of my thesis, which with him is described in a book from Princeton called Quintessentially Princeton Experiences of Senior Theses. And I received an award for it from Hellenic Studies, and it was, very well regarded. And Christian said, "Henrik, if you sat down and expanded on this, you could publish it as a monograph." And I was like, "Oh, wow." And I never did it, and I wish I had. Anyway, Manolis helped me with a paper, the Syriac aspect of it was a historical paper, but it used philology diachronically. It went forward in time, up, through about 15 sources, authors who talk about something called Lemnian earth, which is a medicinal clay, dug on the island of Lemnos off of the coast of Turkey. And you eat it. You can eat clay to dry out your gut, and you can put a plaster of clay on a wound, because even the Greeks and everybody knows that clay has a drying property. Not dirt, but clay, which is greasy, kind of. Anyway, this Lemnian earth, it had kind of a sacred story around it, which was pagan and then Christian and then Muslim, but it referred to Jesus and a lover of Jesus. And it fell out of practical use around, 7th to 10th century. It's hard to pin that down. And then it was brought back into use by Sultan Mehmet the Great in 1520 or around. And that paper is available on my academia.edu page. And if you search for me, my last name is Jaronowski, Jaronowski, as in ice cream, and my first name is Henrik, Henryk, like Henry with a K on the end. Jaronowski, Mickey Mouse. Henrik J. So I guess, please don't come and bother me. Feel free to send me an email. My email is my first name dot last name at gmail.com. So, but anyway, Protohumanism. That Lemnian Earth article is about 24 pages, and it was published with the help, under the kind of tutelage of Heath Lowry, who now lives in Istanbul, and he was the Ataturk professor of Turkish studies at Princeton when I was there. And I took courses with him. I took a seminar on modern Turkish politics with him, and I took a course with him on... I don't know if I took a course with him that directly related to a historical topic, but I think I must have. But I assisted him in preparing some tax registers of Excel files for publication, because he specialized in, among other things, the early Ottoman context of northern Greece, and how maybe 10-15% of the Greeks there converted to Islam, and now after World War I would have moved to Turkey. And he actually was in the Peace Corps for the 1 year that the Peace Corps was in Turkey in 1960-something, in the Pontic city of Trebizond, which is on the coast of the Black Sea. And there's something called syncretism, where Muslims will use Christian ceremonies, or Christians will do, whatever, and kind of taken, like the Virgin of Guadalupe, and a lot of Mexican and Hispanic Catholicism is syncretic to some extent in that it incorporates aspects culturally or philosophically or in vibe of pre-conquest Aztec and other native vibe culture and such. But the syncretism, which interests Heath Lowry, was and still is the not only toleration but kind of participation in Christian superstitions, folk practices that happened in the context of Ottoman Turkey, and he occurred still even today in the 20th century. In the Ottoman times, they wouldn't go sailing until the sailing season, which was inaugurated by a priest blessing a ship. And Orthodox priests go around blessing stuff all the time. They'll bless tanks for the army. They'll bless, your house. I mean, I don't know. I'm not Orthodox, but I'm neither Orthodox Jewish nor Orthodox Christian or anything. I was brought up conservative Jewish, and I am not observantly Jewish, and that's a personal question anyway. And I've never been evangelized by any of these people, even though many of them personally are people of faith or religion. And I can't speak highly enough of the family I had at Princeton among the Hellenic Studies people. But I also like Yiddish. Und wenn die hast eigentlich auf ihr Karten schönste. Bei mir bist du schön, bei mir hast du kein, bei mir bist du der schönste auf der Welt. Bei mir bist du Gitt, bei mir hast du It, bei mir bist du teurer von Geld. Wie viele jünglich haben schon gewollt neben mir, der Worte alle ausgeblieben, hab ich nur dir, bei mir bist du schön, please let me explain. Bei mir bist du schön means that you're grand. Anyway, I did a minor in German, and I took some courses, including one on Yiddish literature, at the Jewish Studies Center at Princeton with Professor Emerita Froma Zeitlin, who teaches Greek tragedy as well as Jewish stuff, and she's wonderful. Her late husband, George Zeitlin of blessed memory, was my boss at Chadbourne and Park. He was a tax partner. He actually helped write the 1954 tax code. He was an intern at the IRS, and his boss said, we need you to type up a new revised version of this tax section. The Secretary of the Treasury is about to get in a cab to Capitol Hill. Type it, get in the cab with him, and on the way to Capitol Hill, you're going to brief him on it, and he's going to present it to the Ways and Means Committee. And he was a real old-fashioned guy. One of his quotes was, "Don't say you're sorry. That makes the person think you got something to be sorry about." And he also said about in appreciating a beautiful girl, he said, "It doesn't cost anything to look." I had a martini with him at the first. They gave us an inaugural steak lunch. Some people had a glass of wine, but I was like, they're not going to make me work. I'm going to have a martini and show up. And I was chatting with George, and he played tennis. He had an apartment in the Upper West Side, and tax people, some of them are very special. The late Charles I. Kingson, I was his assistant. He was a corporate tax teacher at NYU, tax being a three-letter word that ends with X. And he made a joke in class one time. He said, the saying is, one man's meat is another man's poison, meaning that something that one person enjoys might be dangerous or not
good for another. And he said, well, he quoted a joke, which I'll explain why it's funny in a minute. One man's mead is another man's poison. So if you say one man's mead is meat and poison is poison, one man's mead, which was a Proto-Persian, Proto-Kurdish civilization which lived in what would now be eastern Turkey, that area, kind of northern Iraq, stuff like that. One man's mead is another man's Persian, which are the native people of Iran. And it was a funny joke, and no one laughed. And I started laughing, and because I was embarrassed laughing, I broke down. I thought I was howling. But he was very, very special guy, and from the Upper East Side, I visited his apartment once on 86th Street between Park and Madison. And Park Avenue in that area is a very, very fancy address, and I complimented his wife by saying, "Oh, I've never had the pleasure of being in an old-fashioned building on Park Avenue." And she corrected, she said, "We're not on Park Avenue, we're on 86th Street. I said, "Well, it's good enough for me." I actually parked on the street there once at 4 a.m. to deliver a marked-up copy of his packet, his reading packet for the class at Yale Law School in corporate tax in 2010, 2009, I think. His organization was a disaster because I don't know if he wasn't autistic, I don't think, but he was very, very particular, and he actually published a corporate tax book in Chinese. And he was always very appreciative, a truly kind person and a good man. And, Charlie Kingston. But George Zeitlin, he passed a couple years ago. And actually, his claim to fame was that he did the taxes for Purdue Pharma, the makers of OxyContin, which, for me, to make $250,000 a year doing OxyContin's taxes, it's not evil, but it's not terribly inspiring to me. I'd rather be proto-humanistic. But anyway, this Lemnian Earth paper goes through about 8 different languages, and I only knew... there were a couple I didn't know. I can't read Armenian. I can't read Arabic. But it started out in ancient Greek, and then ancient Latin from 200 BC to like 100 AD, Pliny. So it's Dioscorides, Galen, Pliny, Paul of Aegina, 3rd or 4th century. And then we get into the Byzantine stuff with the Suda and Isidore of Seville, the Etymologiae, which is, both of those are encyclopedias. And then there's a side quest into 13th or 14th century English medical encyclopedias called the Alfida and the Synonymia Bartolomei, which thankfully have been published by Oxford. However, they don't publish the entire original, they have a stemma, they have a description of the manuscripts, but their text is not a diplomatic edition and not a verbatim reproduction or edition of either of those manuscripts or transcript of those manuscripts. And those manuscripts still exist, and I actually called Oxford, and I think that you might be able to get them online, scans of them. But anyway, that's something to phone a friend on. But I did a phone a friend on a lifeline for the Armenian, which comes in the 16th century with a text called useful to the ignorant or something. And Manolis helped me with that, Emmanuel helped me with that, and Lowry helped me with the Arabic. And the Syriac was actually very important, and I got a little confirmation on something with Manolis. So this Lemnian earth, terra lemnia, is something that you eat against poison, against diarrhea, and you can put it on wounds. You can plaster it on a wound topically. And it had several names: Lemnian earth, sealed earth, and just redl, which is red pigment clay. And it was used for painting, pigment painting. And the best quality earth was pressed into little pills. And there were other similar type earths, and I think that you wouldn't take it, you would mix it in water and probably drink the water, but there's no description of that. A fellow named Bellon in the late 19th century did a chemical analysis of what we suspect might have been Lemnian earth. We don't know exactly where it was dug. They searched for the vein of it. It was a very special kind of greasy earth, and they would dig it, and then they would do an elutriation pool. They would mix it with water and kind of let it settle, skim off the top, and then put it through a cheesecloth. And the good stuff was taken by the priestess or the person who was officiating and would be pressed into pills, and there'd be a little seal. And anyway, I go through all this, and I'll spare you the goat's blood story. There's no goat's blood. The Lemnian people thought it was silly. They laughed at Dioscorides for saying there was goat's blood. Anyway, it's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm very proud of that paper, and it's been downloaded. It was published in 2008 in a journal called Hellenica in Thessaloniki, Greece, and it's called An Earth by Any Other Name: Uses and Names for Lemnian Earth from 200 BC to 1900 AD. And An Earth by Any Other Name is a play on words, or a play on Shakespeare's "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet." No matter what you call this Lemnian earth, it's the same physical thing. However, the naming of it shows the cultural history of it. It might show a diversity in what it actually physically was, and it's also interesting from a philological point of view and also from an anthropological point of view. It's also of historical interest and local historical interest. Hellenica being a journal of Macedonian studies, published by the Society for Macedonian Studies. Nicholas Bakirtsis in northern Greece was associated with the Hellenic Studies Center at Princeton and helped teach archaeology, worked on archaeology for the Greek state, I believe, in northern Greece, and showed us some sites and visited the monastery of Saint John the Forerunner, Saint Ios Ioannis Prodromos, John the Baptist, on the border of Greece and Bulgaria. And very sadly, there was a fire there, and the refectory, their cafeteria, got burned, and the little frescoes on it got burned, or it was sad. But we have pictures of them. And it's funny, it's a monastery, but it's filled with nuns, because all of the monks kind of died out, and these nuns said, hey, let's save this place. There was one old monk, and they said, okay, well, I'm going to stay here by myself. And they have a nice little church, and their claim to fame is that the man who was the patriarch of Constantinople at the time when Constantinople fell to the Turks is buried in the church. And I spent a couple weeks there with the Hellenic Studies people in the summer of 2005, and it was a very special couple of weeks. So I went to I went Athens to Thessaloniki, and then Thessaloniki to Saris, where the monastery was, and then from Saris to Kavala, and this was with the trip people from Saris to Kavala to another city. And then after they left, I went with a colleague of mine, a classmate, Diana Moore, lovely, lovely person. We went we went overland to a town called Komotini, which is in western Thrace, which is the only city in Greece where there's still a significant population of Muslims. And we took a bus from, it cost like 12 euros or something to get a bus from, 5-hour bus from Komotini, which in Turkish is called Gümülcine, to Istanbul. And when we went to Istanbul, we stayed in a nice hotel run by Armenians, and Diana said, I want to get home. So she left early, and I stayed in a hostel where I paid 10 million Turkish lira, or 6 euros or $7 a night, to sleep on bunk beds on the roof of this place called the Mavi Ev, the Blue Something guest house, with a view of Hagia Sophia, the cathedral, now mosque, in the Ottoman palace complex. Was really cool, and I used a book called Walking Through Byzantium. The food was great. Everyone was so nice. I loved Sipuro, which is not grappa. It's made with pomace, and it tastes like an eau de vie, rather than sambuca. It's like brandy, and it goes down easier for me than sambuca or ouzo. We drank a lot of Retsina, which is resinated white wine. Do you know that Ich mein Holz, you can get wood for Weihnachten, for Christmas, and du kannst es riechen, du kannst es schmecken. Und wenn du das Holz riecht, es riecht wie Liebe, aber wenn du das schmeckst, nicht. You can buy wood, and it's wonderful for Christmas, and if you buy pine wood, it smells, you can sniff it, and it smells like love, but if you taste it, it doesn't. But the resin of pine trees is used to flavor and preserve white wine in Greece called Retsina, which goes really well with Greek food. And Turkish food is very nice too. They have something called börek. Ekmek is bread, but börek is this pastry which can either be savory or sweet, which you can eat for breakfast, or you can have, pizza on a bagel, or have pizza any time. And yeah, I really like Istanbul. I want to go back there. Anyway, yeah, I'm just going to sit here for a minute. If my words did glow with the gold of sunshine, and my tune were played on the harp unstrung, would you hear my come through the music? Would you hold it near as it were your own? It's a hand-me-down. The thoughts are broken, and perhaps they're better left unsung. Well, I don't know. Don't really care, but let there be songs to fill the air, ripple in still waters, where there is no pebble tossed nor winds to blow. Lift up your cup, if your cup be empty. If your cup is full, may it be again, let it be known. There is a fountain that was not made by the hands of man. Da 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 da. Ya da 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 da. Ya da da. Ya da. Ya da da. Ya da. Ya da da. Da 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 da. Ya da da. I would take you home.
Come ye yourselves apart for a moment and rest a while, to a quiet place. So that's the sanctuary back there. There's a little prayer room where you can sit quietly just to that side of the side door, stage door. So this is the garden, and it was the formal name of the church is Unity Christ Church, Christ Consciousness and stuff. Here we are back at the gazebo. The gazebo. It's the same gazebo which was my gazebo with kids in the hall. I'm a girl drink drunk. Tastes like candy. It's a girl drink. So this is going to be a 2-hour show. This is Protohumanism number 1, July 2022, on Monday. This is a weekly show, which is recorded and then broadcast on Twitch, along with me playing chess. So, So I really like the fact that we contributed so I'll put it on the next. Oh, look at this. I feel weird, I feel happy. Birthday, I'll take that home and bring it back. Peace Rose Montessori School. Oh, this is cool. I'm not going to take this home, but I'm going to show you it. Really is a very nice people, and they have a larger facility now on Wrightsville Avenue near just 3 pencils. Evolution Wellness. Ooh, I'm going to take that and bring it back. So yeah, I actually really like having visiting speakers at Unity. At Unity of Wilmington, these bricks were donated by members of the church. My friend Esther Murphy donated one. She's been involved for a long time. Church office is now in the youth ed wing. So at Unity Wilmington, the sermon is called we refer to it as the lesson, and in not classic Unity, but when Charles Fillmore would give talks at Unity Village, they called it the message, which I think is pretty cool. This used to be the church office. Now we rent it out for therapists' offices, which I'm sure they're very good. So I'm taking pictures. So my stream is called Moirologist, or that's my name on Twitch. Moiro, Moiro, like Moira, Moirai, the fates in Greek mythology. Moirologist. Logist means somebody who is versed in the thing. And a moirologist is somebody who is paid to go to funerals and cry at funerals. And I just thought it was a really cool word. It hasn't been used very much by people, so it's a username that was available. And I joked that if I play chess and I'm the moirologist, it means that I specialize in dying or celebrating people's deaths or commemorating people or crying over losses and deaths, or that I could bury my opponents or bury people. And also it has the pun. If you say it fast and you say morologist, it sounds like the Smith-Morra gambit, which is a chess move, a chess gambit, which is famously written about by IM International Master Mark Esserman, with a C, Mark Esserman, who also plays tennis and has a tennis stream on Twitch, which has turned into a chess stream. He teaches chess professionally, and he's a streamer whose format and whose general vibe and community really is an inspiration to me on a practical and a personal basis. So here we are at Independence Avenue, and Boulevard. So you cross the boulevard here. Problem is there's not a real crosswalk anywhere here. And Malpass continues. These pine trees remind me of my childhood, back when the trees were tall. So this Mercer Avenue is the continuation of Forest Hills Drive, which goes down to Oleander, which is the big east-west boulevard. There's train tracks up there. Mercer is interrupted by the train tracks, but continues further to the main road, which connects Wilmington, the city of Wilmington, and the Riverwalk, to the downtown, to Jacksonville, about an hour and a half away, where there's the military base, the Marine base, Marines. And we have here in Wilmington, we have military aviation, which flies out of the local airport, which is 5 miles away and very convenient. They have direct flights to New Haven now, which is interesting, unusual. And we have a Coast Guard station over at the Atlantic Ocean beach. The town there is called Wrightsville Beach. And if you continue down the peninsula, you get to Carolina Beach, which continues on to Curry Beach, Kure Beach. And at the end of that peninsula, there's a ferry, which is, I don't know if it's not very expensive, which goes to Southport, which is very nice. It's in Brunswick County, and you can go back up through Brunswick County to the bridge which crosses the Cape Fear River, which divides New Hanover County and Wilmington from Brunswick County, which is on the South Carolina side of the river and is about an hour from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is near the border of Horry County, South Carolina, and of Myrtle Beach, which North Myrtle Beach has a retreat center called the Meher Baba Center, which is very nice and which has silent retreats, because Meher Baba was an Indian mystic known for his decades of silence at the end of his life, and his travels throughout the United States. And the Meher Baba Center is the ashram that he started, and it's a retreat center now, and it's very nice. I'm from Monroe, New York, and there's a place called the Ananda Bliss, the Nanda Ashram, ananda.org, which has available camping and relaxation services, or yoga and cabins and stuff, about an hour north of New York City, ananda.org, and it's so old, from the 50s, that it's just called the Yoga Society of New York. So Forest Hills goes down to Park Avenue, and Forest Hills Drive on the other side of Wrightsville, which we just crossed, goes all the way up to Forest Hills, kind of veers off, because this goes straight onto what this would be Mercer, but then Forest Hills would curve there, but it doesn't go through Wrightsville anymore for traffic calming purposes. But Forest Hills, continuing on the other side of Wrightsville, goes kind of up a hill and over a little stream all the way up to Market Street, near 23rd Street and the Burnt Mill Creek Park, which is very pleasant. So there's several streets in this neighborhood which are named after Ivy League schools. This one being Harvard Drive, and if you continue to the end of Harvard Drive, a block or two down, there's Princeton Drive, which parallels Forest Hills and actually goes out all the way to Wrightsville. And this neighborhood continues about a mile to Country Club Road, which has a traffic light at both Wrightsville and Oleander. And Park Avenue is in between Wrightsville and Oleander, paralleling both of them, and having speed bumps. So Columbia Street or Drive is on the other side of Wrightsville, and it's a very, very nice, kind of more undeveloped street, because the other side of Wrightsville, the plots are larger and they're not so, it feels more, not rural, but it's more quiet than on this side. But there's train tracks there which are loud, and there's mosquitoes because it's more damp, but it's really very nice. And there's a garden in somebody's house across from the school, the Forest Hills High School. So here's Cambridge, and in the past they've had Shakespeare in the Park there, I think, and during the beginning of the pandemic they put up a sign saying, if you open to the public during the day, please, if you see this sign, please feel free to come sit in our rose garden and walk around. And it was really very lovely, and the people were very kind, and they had a place where they had a gazebo where I saw people, artists or art students or artists, sketching And there's a lot of artists at the community college here, Cape Fear Community College, which was originally founded, not under the auspices, but with the help of Corning Company, which is the glass makers, the Corning Glass Company, which has a manufacturing and research facility here. So this is a community garden. Not take vegetables without need. Community garden policy. Those are new. That used to be just done by, sense of smell. There used to be a huge azalea bush here, but you can see how the magnolia tree there's no branches there. The azalea bush was so large that it choked out the tree. So this here is St. John's Episcopal Church, the Church of St. John the Evangelist, and they allow you to sit quietly in their garden here, which has ashes scattered in that part of it. So we're coming up in 2 hours. I'll show you a bell from downtown. So this is the main door. There's their statue, St. John the Evangelist, and that's not really a steeple. It's kind of more of a faux steeple, but it's very nice. And here's the bell. This bell comes from slavery times. It comes from 1850. Bell is from cast 1860. Church was erected in 1853 between 3rd and Red Cross Streets, the corner of 3rd and Red Cross, which is now, there's a gas station there now. There's a fitness place there, and over there, that's part of the large Hanover Center complex, which has, to the southeast, a Harris Teeter, a large supermarket. So I will go into the garden and bid us farewell, review what we did, and say goodbye. Lovely fountain. Bit of litter to throw away. So thank you so much for joining me here in our first proto-humanistic podcast. And I look forward to recording these every Monday morning, sometime either between Monday and Wednesday. My name's Henrik Jaranowski, and we'll end with the peace song. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, united all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me, let this be the moment now. With every breath I take, let this be my joyous vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace, eternally. Be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. So, Salome, friends, go into the light till next we meet. From Wilmington, North Carolina, in St. John's Episcopal Church, this is the Proto-Humanist signing off.